Okay, let's take a look at our announcements. Okay, this is the lecture right now that is happening right now as we speak. And labs 9 and 10 prep videos available now. All right, well, they've been available. They are available for some time now. Just need to know that in our YouTube playlist, yes, they're available. Please watch them. Okay. Student feedback surveys. I wonder if they're still available or not, but you're welcome to open up with your thoughts there. Lab 8 prep video. Still Lab 8 is going on till the rest of the week, so I left that announcement there. Helpful links. This is, I just added that and I put it on the very bottom. Oh, not the very, well, it's on the bottom of the first page of the announcements. So I have included some helpful video links for you to enjoy. Now, you don't have to watch them. However, if somebody is thinking about pursuing your career in this field, I would strongly encourage you to watch some of that. And I included more than one video, and this is about the tools that you might need when working in the so-called modern telecommunications, as I call it. It has something to do with, well, you know, as a cable technician. Now, cable technician is quite deceiving, not deceiving, but the term doesn't give a proper justice, because what's involved in this field is not just running cables, although it's a huge part of it, but it's also setting up various type of equipment. Sometimes you are required to set up the whole thing, like the whole retail store, and a lot of things are involved, including setting up the modems, and doing all kinds of setup that is given to you, that is included in the instructions manual. That's with this thick and sometimes this thick. Yeah, but don't worry, any of those setup instructions and manuals and whatnot, they are supported by a technical support by the companies who sent you there, and sometimes you will get an extensive training on any particular system that is coming out that's new, or sometimes they retrain people because, you know, new people being hired to different companies, and manufacturers, they do want to sell their product, and in order for them to sell their product successfully, people who install their products have to be comfortable. So there's all kinds of things going on in the background. Okay? I'm going to also make another video on my perspective, because there's some tools that I can see in all those videos that yes, they're pretty good, and there are different perspectives by different people, so you can tell that there's not only one set type of scenario that is presented. It depends on what you do mostly for your job, right? But there are some basic tools that I think, tools and accessories, like for example, a console cable. I've never seen anybody mentioning something like console cable. Good laptop with some specific software. Yeah, so I'm going to make another video that I'll present my perspective. It's just going to be one more of those. All right. Now, as far as labs 9 and 10, the two labs, there are a couple of groups that are scheduled for the Good Friday, and as we know, Good Friday is going to be well, it's a holiday, so we don't go to work, we don't go to school. And a couple of those groups that are going to be presented with a little tiny bit of a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join Mr. Habinski's class, and I'll pick you one by one, because the patch panel lab 8 is a relatively simple one, so you might finish this thing in an hour or so. So if somebody finishes early, I'll just grab you and I'll get you to the fusion splicer, and you perform the fusion splice. And as far as the coaxial cable F connector, That should take you no more than 3 minutes, or maybe 4.5 minutes to perform. Okay. So that's as far as they are now. Oh, well, there's more. I noticed that some of us have not submitted some of the labs, and some of us have performed those labs but haven't submitted the deliverables, which will be the lab report. Our lab reports are in the form of the deliverables. In the real world, if you do not submit the deliverables as instructed, well, there is no payment that is going to happen. And if there is no payment, then your boss, if you work for someone, your boss is going to be not very happy with you because they don't get paid. And if they don't get paid, you won't get paid. And you will hear from them about that. And if you keep doing that, you will stop hearing from them altogether. So please submit those deliverables so I can give you the marks. So in a school environment, you don't submit those deliverables. It's just like it's part of the work that needs to be done. You know, there's a good old saying: the day is not done until the paperwork is done. It applies in school environment and it applies in the real world. You know, when you go to do your job, when you work. Also, there are some of us that still haven't performed, like for example, Lab 1. Lab 1 was done a long time ago. All the submission boxes are still open, all right? They're wide open. You can submit files there. So just, if you haven't done Lab 1, you don't need to come to school for that. This was a do-at-home type of action that was required. So if you are not submitting that one, you're just basically depriving your own self from the marks. Okay, so please just do that, and just take a look what marks you don't have for whatever reason. It could be because you haven't submitted the deliverables. It could be because you haven't done the lab for whatever reason, COVID or whatnot. Please just join any of the sections, come in, let us know that you're making up lab whatever, and we'll set you up with the bits and pieces so you can do that. And the videos are available still on YouTube, so you can watch the instructions, and we will assist you with any kind of help that you need, right? So please do that, because the term is coming to an end and we only have so much time to wrap things up, okay? Right, so that's as far as that the speech that I had to give. All right, so let's just jump into the topic at hand. This was the last slide that we have finished on. Yes, I mean last time we saw each other, and we stopped at the black mold topic. The next thing would be, and I didn't want to rush through it, so so basically we just did this here. Oh, well, you should probably see that here, right? There we go. Okay, so we'll talk about the cable installation stages. This is not the equipment installation, because the whole job involves many different stages. Start from planning and laying the infrastructure and finishing on submitting the deliverables as instructed by whoever hires you. There is a reason why we put so much emphasis on the way that we expect you to do the deliverables, and the reason for that is this is going to be what you will be faced with in the real world, so-called quote unquote real world. We are in the real world anyways. You're in school. It sounds real to me. However, we are practicing for the actions that you'll be required to perform once you go and find yourself a job. All right, and so that doesn't mean it's just this field, IT installations or infrastructure installations. Pretty much any job that you'll be required to do, whether it's in this, whether it's going to be something else. most of the time, or if not all the time, you will be required to do some form of deliverables. Now, we are doing this thing on paper and scanning it and submitting it. What you will see as the technology moves forward, more and more often you're going to see different companies have apps, so you can instead of doing things on paper, you'll be able to pull out your tablet and do the deliverables on the tablet. But the procedures and the idea is the same, whether it's on tablet or a laptop or even sometimes on a phone, which I'm not too keen on because phone is kind of small. And some people are actually complaining about the phone apps. But we're getting you ready so you're comfortable with doing things that you're going to be required to do. Right? Okay. So this is about the cable infrastructure that we are supposed to do. Okay. So first thing here, we're talking about something that's called roughing in. All right. Now, this is one of the stages of the whole job. Excuse me, laying the cables. First thing, you do the planning, you do the quote, you get the acceptance, you get the contract, and then one of the sort of like real things that you're going to ask to perform would be cabling, because if you need to install some sort of a system, it involves a lot of cables. So especially when you are doing the data work or data infrastructure, sort of like a LAN environment, right? So roughing in, it's a stage, right? Let's see what I wrote here. All cables brought to location at both ends, destination and home run. What do I mean by the destination? Yeah. Destination would be the, let's say, a data jack or a phone jack or whatever it is, the device that you need to install at the desktop location, underneath the desk, on top of the desk, on the wall, in the ceiling, in the field. So that's the field devices, right? And a home run would be sort of like not sort of like but it would be usually a communication closet or a LAN room or communications room or some sort of like a central point that everything will be running to, all those cables. So let's read it again. All cables brought to location at both ends, destination and home run location, right? So this at the destination, which would be in the field. Now there would be different things. You're supposed to prepare your wires so they will be ready for termination. Okay. Now, if you have a timber type of a framing, there's such a strong wind outside here going on. I wonder if you hear it or not. I hope you don't, but it almost looks like it's trying to tear the building apart. So excuse me for that. Anyways, so if it's a timber structure, what would you do that makes sense? Roughing is basically run the wire, bring it to location on one end, bring it to location on the other end. And of course, that goes without saying, which I'm going to say, labels. Make sure that those cables are labeled. Remember, during the labs, we're asking you to label the cables at both ends. And sometimes with a patch panel, the last lab, the current lab that we're doing right now, we're asking you to put the labels right at the punch location. And on the other end of the cable, we are practicing getting into a habit of labeling the cables at both ends. Because at the when things are being done, you're going to have a bunch of cables coming out of the hole in the wall, and you're not going to know which cable is which if you don't put a label on it, right? And then at the other end, there are going to be cables pulled to the location on the other end. Right, and you will not know which cable is which if you don't put a label on it. So make sure you get into a habit and be really, really strict about it, that the labels have to be there and the labels have to be clear. right? So sometimes when you use the magic marker or the permanent marker, sometimes I would make 3 labels. I would on the one end, I would just do 1 label, maybe 8 inches further, another same label, and 8 inches further, another same label, because sometimes during the pulling process, the numbers could be wiped out or something like that, right? Just to make sure, right? And the same thing on the other end. So sometimes it just goes without thinking, label, 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 all right, put it away. Label, 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 all right, put it away, right? So, so yeah, it is extremely important that the labels are there. Now, in this situation right here, okay, what would you do? What can we see here? We see a timber framing, and we do see some horizontal studs or notchings here. So if you run the cable to this location and you coil it up in the ceiling, and then the drywall comes on, you're going to have a hard time getting that wire into this box right here, right? So what would you do in this case? In this case, what I would do is I would just make sure I drill a hole here, and I drill a hole here before the drywall gets put on, and then I would run the cable right to the box and coil it there. Maybe sometimes, it depends on how rough the construction environment is. Sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes I would put them in like a plastic bag, just so when the drywall is there and the painters go with their paint and all that stuff, they don't damage those cables too much. But sometimes it's just enough to have some little bit extra wire, and then push it in, and then coil it up here, so you have something to pull out later on. Okay, so this would be the roughing in this case. Now, if this would be a timber framework in the residential and some commercial environment. Here in Ontario, most of the framing would be steel when it comes to commercial. When you go towards the western parts of Canada, I've seen a lot of timber being instead of steel studs. So it's just the way it goes, right? So if it's a commercial building and if it's a steel studding, and if you see that this is just a hollow space, there's no horizontal studs, because in the steel framing, you're going to notice that you're going to see there is a tendency of not installing those horizontal studs in the steel framing. In the wood framing, you can almost bank on that there's going to be a horizontal stud there. Okay, and I'm just calling it horizontal stud because this is the most terminology. This is the term that you're going to hear the most. The technical term for that is a notching, right? I'm just trying to get rid of that here. Okay. So you're going to have to use your own judgment when you're doing the roughing in, right? So that's on one side. On the other side, you're going to, if this is a commercially prepared for you LAN room or communications room, then you can just coil those cables, and there's going to be a lot of them, like 200 cables. When they're just laid out like that, they could look quite disorganized and quite messy. So get them into some sort of bundles. You can just you can wrap them around with the tape, which I'm going to take off later on, coil them up, strap them into the ceiling, so nobody walks on those cables. Don't ever leave cables laying around, because people will walk over them, and when it comes to data cables especially, it is not good if somebody steps on them. If you step on the cable, if you put any kind of structural damage, you're voiding the specifications of that cable, all right? So that's on the other side. Now I have a little picture here. Let me just see if I can. Here. Okay. So this was a job that I've done some years ago, and it was a house. It was a house for commercial purposes. So the communications room was not that big, and there was not too many wires, although there were some coaxial cables and there were some data cables. So in this communication closet to be, because nothing is drywalled yet, there was an opening for us here, and I installed a grommet. See, that's a grommet. Right. It's not a, well, it's sort of like a device box, but it's an opening. It's open on the other side, so it's a free air on the other side. It's the best for communications cables, cabling, right? Now it still has to comply with the local code. There was no problem where we are. So the communication cables could be installed in the grommet, and then you could install something that's called a scoop, which is basically a faceplate with an opening, or a grommet or faceplate with some kind of like a clean, nice opening, so the aesthetic, the cables look aesthetically nice, right? Excuse me. All right. I'm okay now. But if even if you don't install that, this will be a working room communications closet. That will be fine too. So what did I do here? I ran all those cables through the opening, because I know that there will be a drywall put on later on. So I just brought them out and coiled them up nicely and put them in a plastic bag and put it out of the way. Before I left that job site, I strapped it a little bit higher there. So and I instructed the general contractor just to make sure that nobody disturbs those wires. Right now, that can go either way, because they can say, yeah, fine, we'll watch for it, and at the end of the day, you come back 2 weeks later and those cables are damaged and all that. So you gotta be careful with that kind of stuff. All right. So let's just go over this statement here. Roughing in stage. All cables brought to location at both ends, destination and home run location. Destination. Coil the cables in the ceiling. Okay. So this is what I wrote. All right. So if you know that there's an opening there, and if the drywall comes down, you can just coil it up in the ceiling and come back to it later. Right? So when all the drywall comes in and everything else, you just come there, cut out the opening, put the grommet, put the wire in, and pick it up on the other side. Right? So that would be the best scenario, because once you coil it up, leave it in the ceiling, nobody's going to disturb it, nobody's going to walk on them and all that stuff. So that's if it's steel studding. If it's a timber studding, then well, you might have to bring it right to the box. Use your own judgment for that. Okay. So it would be something like this. Right? You would just run your cables here and coil them up. But next thing, after the roughing in stage, we would have something that's called a destination prep. Now, when it comes to installing wires, the best thing is that you don't do it by yourself. Aside from the safety aspect, but if you're on the construction site, there's always somebody to call 911. But never ever work alone on the construction site. The thing about installing wires, there should be at least 2 people running the wires. It's just that much faster, that much easier, that much more efficient. And most of the communication companies, they know that when estimating the job. If there's a job that it's going to take you 10 hours to do the wire pulling, the roughing in, right? 2 people, 10 hours. You eliminate 1 person. How long do you think the job is going to take? It's not going to take twice as much. It's going to take at least 3 times as much. Because when installing wires, there could be one person on one side just getting those wires out of the box, feeding them into the opening, and the other guy is pulling. So things are happening nice and smooth. If you're just by yourself, you're going to have to walk to the other end, pull a little bit of a slack, and maybe walk to the other end, pull a little bit more, and then maybe something's going to get tangled along the way. You have to go untangle that, and so it's just not a nightmare. It's doable, but it just takes at least 3 times as much, not as twice as much, if you eliminate one person out of the 2. Okay? Now, then the next stage would be destination prep. And what did I write here? Listen, all cables pulled down to the boxes, grommets, labels transferred. All right, and head end, all cables cut to working length, labels transferred, cables sorted. All right, let's analyze this situation here. Destination. So if you were just coiling those cables right on top, on basically in the ceiling space, then you would just go and arm yourself with arm yourself with certain type of tools. The efficiency is the reason for doing those stages, because when you do one type of a job, you get yourself a set of certain type of tools, and you're performing repetitively one certain type of a task, and that's what makes things efficient. Right? But if can you do this whole thing, run a cable from one end to the other, terminate it on one side, then go and terminate it on the other side, and test it, and make sure? Yes, it is done sometimes if it's 1 or 2 that maybe addition or retrofit or something like that, or service call. Yes, you can do that. But if it's a bigger project, you need to do some sort of you need to have some sort of a structured way of doing things, so you can do this efficiently, and you can actually make money and not lose money on it, right? So if in this case, once the 2 of you, or that there's a team, get all the wires roughed in to the location, then you split the duties. One person goes and takes care of the head end, and the other person goes and takes care of the field. And you get one set of type of tools to get this thing done, and you get yourself a different type of tools, maybe similar ones, maybe some cards that you can roll in or whatever, and maybe a little bit of a box so you can throw the garbage in. So aesthetics are important, and always clean up after yourself. There's nothing worse than somebody coming to the side and do the job and leave a mess behind. It's extremely unprofessional, right? So you're going to get yourself at the destination. You're going to go and maybe get yourself a ladder, and just pull those cables to the location, and maybe terminate, right, or prep for termination. Depends. You might actually terminate it altogether, right? And then, but this is a destination preparation. So you just pull them out, pull them down, and get them ready to be terminated. And then on the other side, this is a picture I've done somewhere in Windsor a few years ago, nice few years ago. This would be a wall-mounted rack. Remember when we were talking about during the labs, we have the patch panels. Here's an unloaded patch panel. You can tell it's unloaded because you can see the empty spaces right there. Okay? So what I do here for the, excuse me, a sneeze coming up. Excuse me. All right. So I would have those wires coiled up somewhere and strapped to some sort of structure there. And once the other person is doing the field, this person here would just undo the loop, lay them on the floor, transfer the labels to maybe some comfortable location right here. Transfer the labels all to that. And then after that, you're going to guesstimate on how much length you need for the whole thing. You might want to just have maybe a service loop above here. So just do 1, 2 coils or something. And then you're going to sort those wires. This is a relatively small project that was done, but in the big project, like this would be like, I don't know, like 20, 30 wires here altogether after the whole job was done. If it's a bigger project, then you need to sort the wires. Sometimes you're going to estimate, okay, designate wires numbers from so and so to so and so is going to go on that specific patch panel. Get them all together in the bundle. Make sure nothing is missing. Make sure nothing is mislabeled. Make sure everything is nice and dandy. So get them into a bundle, right? Separate them from the rest. Then you're going to designate a bunch of other cables to another patch panel. Find those wires, make sure the labels are there, verify that every cable is there that you need, and nothing is mislabeled. Separate them like that, right? And then you're going to start terminating. Sometimes when it's a bigger project and if you have 600 wires to deal with, it might take you a day or two to just sort them, because you're not just, they're all in one big huge bundle and they're interweaved with each other. So sometimes it takes a longer time to get them separate in the separate bundles and make them nice, neat, and beautiful. So just the way we're asking you to perform with our little patch panel lab. Okay, so that would be the preparation stage. And then we go with the termination. All right. In the field location, this will be that was the same job that I showed you on the previous picture. Well, then you make the connections final. You cut those cables to the length. Maybe you're going to have a little bit of a service loop on the very top there. So if you need to work and you need to cut the wire and pull a little bit more length, you have something to work with. And then you're going to cut them to length on here, terminate them on the jacks, put the faceplate, label them. Sometimes you're going to have to run a little raceway. I broke this is a steel beam here, so I broke a lot of drill bits trying to get those self-tapping screws, but still I had to pre-drill the holes. And that was probably the most notorious job, just to get those holes. Yes, there was a double-sided sticky tape on that raceway, but you don't use that as a permanent installation. You might use that sticky tape just to hold it in place while you are mounting it properly. But don't ever just use a sticky tape and leave it on. Sometimes on certain type of surfaces, yes, you can get away with that. But for the most part, you're going to have some sort of a harder way of mounting that, and screws is it. All right. So this would be the termination part, and we have done it during our labs. We have done with the toolless, we have dealt with the 110 termination, and we have dealt with screw terminals this term and the previous term. So you pretty much know some of the most basic ways of terminating cables. All right, so that will be the field location, and see if I can move that to here. And this would be an example of a termination that is done on the other end, on the head end. Okay? Remember I was talking to you about the support bars? This is what the support bar looks like, right here. There's a bar that sticks out. All right, I wonder if you can see it. Let me see if my pointer, can you see my pointer? I can't change it. I was able to change it, but I can't find it now. Anyways, there is a support bar right here, and it just goes around like this, and it's just sticking out a little bit at the back, so you can mount the cables. So this would be the different way of terminating patch panels. Sometimes you would terminate them the way we showed you on those miniature patch panels, and that's fine. And sometimes you're going to have to use the support bars. And the reason for that is that sometimes when you need to go and troubleshoot and add certain wires, those wires should be sitting there nice and comfortably and not squeezed too much. You can see there's a Velcro being used. And they should have relatively easy access to any type of a jack that you need to access without disturbing other ones. Okay? All right. And so this would be the this would be the termination type of this stage. Okay. Now I'm going to mention something to you. When you have the stages, it's a good idea to include those in the contract, right? Because sometimes you're going to find yourself that you're going to love just doing the installations and you get the satisfaction out of that, and you'll just be really good at it, and this is what you'll do, and that's fine, right? But sometimes you're going to have to pick up maybe some private contracts or run your own business or whatnot. Then you're going to have to do some planning. Okay. Now, when it comes to the stages, this is a good idea to work out the contract so you can get paid in stages. Right? Really good idea. And include that in the contract. If you can't prepare the contract by yourself, ask for some assistance. Even a lawyer, right? You prepare that thing once. And then you just, like for example, if the whole job costs so much money, one of the first payments that you would receive would be, well, you get all the equipment. If the equipment costs you maybe $50,000, do you have $50,000 in the bank? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, right? If you don't have $50,000 in the bank, so you could spare with, you could live without for like maybe say 3 to 6 months. If you have that money, yeah, okay, more power to you. But if you don't, that should not stop you from performing the job. So here's what you do. You get yourself a line of credit, or not a line of credit, or a credited account with the distributors. Okay? And you have to be really consistent with that. So you just go and pick up all the equipment from the distributor. You bring it on site, and the first payment would be when the equipment is being delivered on site. You get the signature, whoever receives that, and you get the check for whatever the cost, plus maybe you're going to get some markup. So you already made some money just bringing the equipment on site. And then that means you don't have to have $50,000 in the bank, because you get the check from the client for that portion of the whole big picture, and then you put it in the bank and pay it to the distributor, and just money goes in. Also, there you go. You didn't have that money in the bank, but it didn't stop you from performing the job or getting the contract, right? So here's that one stage, right? In the contract, if you don't get the check for that, you take the equipment back to the distributor and say goodbye to the client, because if you have problems at this kind of beginning stages with the client, then you can almost count on that you're going to have some bigger problems later on, and it will have to do something with money. All right. So in that case, if there was a contract, was agreement, and the client doesn't want to pay, that the client is the one who broke the contract, not you. Right? It's just a little kind of tricks of the trade, right? So there'll be one stage of the payment. Now, work out another milestone. See, I'm giving you the stages. Roughing in. After roughing in, there's another portion of the payment. Then after termination, then after whatever you can work out. Just so you know, because some of the projects they will take longer time. It's not just okay. We need to install 100 data jacks. Can we just go in it? And 100 data jacks, it might take you a few days to do it, and then you're done. But no, sometimes you go in stages, because you have to wait for other trades to complete their work. You're going to rough in the cables, but the drywallers are not done yet, right? The drywallers are scheduled to be 2 weeks from now, because there's some plumbing being worked on, right? All that stuff, right? Now, when it comes to window of opportunity for pulling wire, for installing the wire, you do it before the drywall is put on and after the air ducts are being done. The air duct people are the most damaging from the experience. I love them. They're nice people, but usually They might not understand the wiring, same as we don't understand the air ducts, okay, or plumbing, right? So, so try to have it, but because the air duct people, they are the closest people that have to do with, they work in the same space that your wires are, right? And wires can get damaged. So get your wiring done, window of opportunity, before the drywall gets put on. That's the best. And after the air ducts, people are gone, right? So then you can route your wires around that, right? If you can help it, right? If not, you're going to have to work with some sort of agreement with the air duct people that they're not going to destroy your wires. Okay, so then you can work out the stages, because the projects can take longer time, and you need money to run your business, you need money to pay your bills, you need money to live, to exist. And you're not going to wait maybe 6 or 8 months to get the payment. Well, if you have a bigger company that you can afford that kind of stuff, then yes, it happens too. But it's not the best situation. If you can work out a contract that you can get paid in stages, that's the best, because that keeps you afloat, that keeps you going. Plus, you're protecting yourself against some kind of ugly sides of the reality, because what happens is sometimes the contractors that hire you, and it happens once or twice sometimes, they go bankrupt, they go out of business, whatever. And who are you going to chase for the money? Right? So get the money in stages. And sometimes what happens also is that after you have done your job, everybody else gets paid. The electricians get paid, the plumbers get paid, whatever other contractors get paid, and you're going to get paid last, and maybe you're going to have to wait 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months sometimes. So I'm just giving you some kind of knowledge that you can protect yourself against that. Get paid in stages. Have it in the contract. And if the contract is not fulfilled, then you do not continue. And you're not the one who broke the contract. The other guy did, right? So, all right. So now, so all this stuff, and I say, but first here. First, you would do something that's called a survey. What is a survey? A survey involves someone who is already experienced in this type of a job, that they can predict what is needed. What are you looking to predict? Well, if, for example, if there is a VoIP telephone system that needs to be installed, well, if you're going to do the survey, you're going to go, and first thing you're going to look to see, you're going to try to see if there is Cat5e cabling installed, because VoIP telephone system requires Cat5e at the minimum. And some of the old installations that are still implemented in some places, they still run on Cat5. Now, they had that network installed long time ago. It still works. Then they left it. Right? Maybe they don't need some specific type of speed or whatever, and it still runs on Cat5. But if you get the VoIP system to be installed, you need to make sure that the Cat5e is there. So you're going to go and write things down. The section so and so, we need to pull so many wires that need to be Cat5e, and the other ones have to be removed. You take a look at the PA system. That is it interfaceable with the other? Is there any other equipment? And you're going to look to all the locations, making sure that even the wire is there. Is it connected? Because sometimes the cable goes there, but the person who works in that office never uses that connection. They just have their own laptop and they use Wi-Fi. So you just have to So that's the survey. Right now, if it's a new installation, some time ago, we used to still in contact with these guys here. We used to have a nice team going on, and we used to do private contracts, right? And it would be 3 of us. 2 of them are here, and I'm the third one taking the picture, right? So you would just go and walk around, making notes. So you have to plan things. You're going to have to look if the structure in reality reflects the drawings, and whatnot. And you're going to have to go and touch every physical location, just making sure that things are doable. Right? And do the count and do the maybe you're going to get estimate the length of wires that are needed and so on. Right. So planning is a huge stage. Include that. Try to include that in the in the whole price for the whole thing. Right? So planning is important. And the last, deliverables. What can I tell you about the deliverables? Whatever I've been telling you through the whole term here, deliverables are important. If you don't submit the deliverables, you don't get paid. And you see, we're asking you to take a couple of pictures, and we're asking you to take those pictures a certain way, because this is what we'll be asked to do. But in the job field situation, if you go do some contracts and some works for clients, you're not going to be asked to take 2 pictures. You're going to be asked to take maybe 20, 30, 40, sometimes 100 pictures. 60 will be the average, or 40, right? And they're going to have to take in a certain way, and they have to be included in the deliverables, and the deliverables have to be filled out perfectly, because if those deliverables paperwork is not filled out properly, if there's some signatures missing, if there's some information that's missing, the person who receives sits at some desk, and all they do is receive the deliverables. If something is missing, they're not going to call you. They're just going to reject that, and they're going to give you a quick snapshot of a reason. Kaboom. And then your boss is not going to be happy because they don't get paid. Maybe the payment is going to be delayed, and they will not be happy with you, right? So deliverables are important, right? Yeah, so that was a job that I did also a few years ago. It was just mounting a flat screen TV on the wall, and we had to go surface mount on the wall, because we couldn't run the wires inside the wall. Plus, it was electrical, so it had to be done a certain way. It was just had to be plugged in, and we couldn't just leave the cable hanging there, because that's a commercial side. It was a store, so everything has to be nice and neat. So we couldn't have the cable hanging there to plug in the TV, and the electrical outlet at the back of the TV or of the monitor was not provided. So we had to run the surface mount wire molding there. Okay, and then we took pictures at the back, explaining what is what. So if somebody receives that, they will have no questions of what is what and why it was there, and making sure that it's there, that whatever was contracted out to be done was done. And this over here would be the head end right here. So I just threw those pictures and I put them in some kind of a scattered way, but this is not the way it would do, right? It would be just doing it in a way that you're asked to do. Okay, but this is I just did a whole bunch of those pictures for the presentation purposes. Okay, just to say that you need to take pictures. Right? Now I have a couple of yays or nays here as far as installations. This is a beautiful, beautiful installation. It takes a lot of knowledge and experience to do something like that. This is not my installation, but I have done something like that. After a while, you get to do that kind of stuff. Sometimes you can see that the cables are being sorted by color in contract. Sometimes, and you're going to see often, not so many colors, because this is like kind of extreme case right here. But often you're going to be asked to pull, let's say, blue cable for the phone jacks and white cable for the data jacks, or vice versa, right? On the desktop. On the desktop, once you mount the faceplate, you're not going to see what cable is in behind it, right? But for serviceability, maybe it might make some kind of a difference. And then on the head end, you're going to route some cables, the blue cables, one way for the data or voice or whatever else for whatever purpose, and then the other color cables you're going to route to the other, and this is the way the client wants. So yeah. And there's one thing I didn't mention before the deliverables would be the testing and troubleshooting. So I knew I was forgetting something. Testing and troubleshooting. You get the tester, and sometimes it's just enough to qualify the runs, and sometimes it's necessary to certify them. What's the difference between qualifying and certifying? Well, first of all, is the money. The qualifier might cost about, I don't know, $1,500. The tester that is going to qualify. What is it going to check? It's going to check for the wire map if it's correct. It's going to check for the length if it's not too long. 328 feet is the max. If it's longer, it's going to fail. It's going to fail that link, and it's going to perform certain light duty signal performance on that. It's going to say, okay, this thing qualifies as Cat 5e, or this qualifies as Cat 6. Now, when it comes to certifying, the equipment is usually about $8,000 more than that. So it's about $10,000 tester. Okay. So I apologize for the background noise. So then the certifier gets to do some way more rigorous tests. And usually it has to do with crosstalk and attenuation and all that stuff. And it's going to test it inside out, left and right, back and forth. And it's going to come out with a report for every link. You're going to put that in the memory of that tester. And it's going to, after the whole job is done, you're going to upload all those links onto your computer. And then maybe you can make one big PDF file or print it or give it to the client because the client requests those cables to be certified. And that's why we're stressing out, get the perfect termination. When we're saying the twist has to be right to the punch, the twist has to be right to the punch, because if it's not, then the cable is not going to test properly, right? It's not going to be qualified, or qualified, yeah, but if it's not going to certify. Cat 5e will forgive you some stuff. Cat 6 will not. Cat 6 will have no mercy on you if you don't have a perfect punch. And if you have 10 or 12 runs, then you can spare some time to fix those connections. But if you have 600 runs and 80 of them test bad, that means 160 to check, because 80 on one side, 80 on the other side, right? So that could make and break your profit on this particular job, right? So testing and troubleshooting. So you have to designate that maybe one day, maybe 2 days, maybe even more. It depends on the size of the project. Okay? So this pretty much is a yay. This is a beautiful installation. Try to avoid doing things like that. Now, I got the picture a long time ago from the internet. There's a reference in the notes. I don't know how possible it was to make something like that. Right? I don't know. First, I thought it was a joke, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like actually somebody let things get out of hand that way. Don't do that, kids. Don't do it at home. Don't do it anywhere else. Try to troubleshoot something like this. You can't. Right? So this versus that. Get the jobs that look like this instead of jobs looking like that. And with time, you're going to develop that sixth sense of neatness when it comes to wiring. All right. Another good job here. This looks like Cat 6 to me because of the thickness of the wires here comparing to the zip ties. And then they're nicely, and see what I said, you're going to develop some sixth sense of or extra sense of neatness. Look, they even align the Velcro binding so it looks nice. Why do you do that kind of stuff? Well, you do this kind of stuff so it is done properly. And the other thing is that if you do something like this, it's not just one-time job that you're going to get. The business of data and infrastructure, it's an ongoing business, right? Some certain company is they're going to set up certain office certain way. They will need 40 runs there. And they will go for 2 years like that. And then they're going to expand or do some changes, or they're going to designate another room. They're going to do another 50 runs over there. So it's ongoing, ongoing, ongoing. And if you do a job like this, and it's easy to troubleshoot, it's free of troubles, very little maintenance after done properly, and it looks beautiful. And there's a big chance, huge chance, that they're going to call you back to do one more job and one more job and one more job. If you do something like this, they will never call you back. Right? That's how you get the next business. Here's another job here. As a, it's an interesting kind of a, almost can use it as a form of art here. That looks like either 66 blocks or maybe cron blocks to do that. It looks like it's an old some sort of a telephone installation, and there's one more people that they needed to, that was just messing out with just adding things on. Things got out of hand. So if I saw something like that, I wouldn't even touch it, because if you try to touch one thing, you could touch 5 other things in the process and mess them up, right? So neatness is important when it comes to doing the infrastructure installations, right? Okay, we got 4 minutes to go. That's pretty much it for today. And I will, I wonder if you hear the wind. Yeah. I will see you when I see you. And just remember, the labs, I will be joining Mr. Habinski tomorrow, and I'll pick you one by one, whoever is in those groups, Friday groups, to do the fusion splicing, so we can take care of that Good Friday thing. So yeah. And if you haven't done any, there's some labs that you're missing, this is the time to think about them now. We don't have that much time before ending of the term. Get all those loose ends tied, because once the time runs out, right? And if you find yourself that you're running into trouble with some stuff, talk to us, all right? Whatever we can help you with, we will. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you guys, and have a wonderful day.